The very first moment that you come up this little pathway at the beginning and you see just the beautiful sunset and like that 1980s like vibe that you get there. Of course, I'm old, I'm from the 80s, and there's something just beautiful about the map just from the get-go.
Prometheus is my favorite planet in the Borderlands series for several reasons. One of those reasons is that it gives off cyberpunk vibes, and that stems from the huge skyscrapers and the colorful lighting that you can see throughout the entire planet.
Dynamic environments, changing from flash freezes of a drastic scale to droughts so large entire continents dry up. Its population, ranging from dull working miners long abandoned to leftovers of experiments forgotten by Hyperion. Its aggressive fauna and flora, making Australia look like a little icky wicky baby nursery.
Here's 1 piece, 2 piece, 3 piece, 4 piece, 5
planets, alongside many more added in DLC, leave Borderlands 3 with an insane aesthetic variety, with beautiful environments and breathtaking scenery.
Are those vaults?
You know what that means.
Yeah. No rest for the wicked.
Which is something you would really hope for after a cliffhanger as good as Borderlands 2's. That's right gang, Crypto Attenborough is back at it again with a documentary! Yeah! Talking about planets and the system that comes paired alongside them in Borderlands 3. Now, to admit to sin before the Passion of Christ 2 releases and the big man sends me to rot downstairs, 5 years ago and up until my latest replay of the game, I was not the biggest fan of Borderlands 3's execution of planets. I think it was mainly because we got so many environments it felt really overwhelming, especially considering we spent 3 whole games on Pandora alone. Sure, we had Elpis in the pre-sequel, but Elpis was always there, visibly present in other games, right? But another reason was definitely that with each planet having a theme attached to it, Pandora got stripped of its diversity to just remain as a drought wasteland, which left our classic beloved Borderlands home as a shell of its former self. But upon recently replaying the game half a decade later, I found myself actually appreciating the system a lot more and felt like discussing it because I feel like a lot of details are overlooked by many in this community. Speaking of, Borderlands 3 has been out for 5 years. What? Now, Pandora in Borderlands 1 has always been by far my favourite iteration of a planet.
God, I hate this planet.
Well, do you know what everyone else hates? Kate Blanchett, Lilith. That game's art style complemented it super well. It was always supposed to be this dangerous planet where death is waiting for you at every turn, and the dull colours really help represent its metaphorical darkness and grittiness. A lot of complaints you'll hear about Borderlands 1, even from the CEO of Gearbox himself, is that, oh, it's too brown. So then, they'll go play Borderlands 3, where the whole game is saturated more than a fucking CJOC thumbnail with constant eye stimulation, where stuff pops up on screen every 3 seconds to make sure the 12-year-olds don't go play another game, and I just insulted my whole age demographic. Fuck. But again, I feel like that was the best part about it. From the beginning of Borderlands 1's marketing campaign, Pandora was described as this planet with no escape, low chances of survival, and high chances of death.
If the bandits don't get you, the wildlife will. You won't last long here. Not without help. Not without guns. A hell of a lot of guns. Why have you come here? You're looking for the vault, aren't you? You won't find it. I'll tell you the same thing I told all those who came before you. It doesn't exist. Regardless though, Borderlands 2 eventually rolled around with its own little evolution of Pandora, and whilst I personally think the graphical change with a much brighter theme completely made the fear factor of the planet redundant, I really did like what the game did with adding new biomes to the planet. We had the typical wasteland environment, to the expanded upon snow, to the volcanoes, to the swamp, to the list goes on. It was very enjoyable and kept things fresh and made the map variety very good and perfect for a sequel. So after noting all the positive reception and praise Borderlands 2 received for its map variety,
Why does Borderlands' main planet in its third mainline title take such a step back? I understand why the planet doesn't take a huge portion of the story up, as given the circumstances and direction they took, we did have to travel from planet to planet a lot. But why? It's all sand, but Borderlands 1 had more variety than this. And the fact this whole game is even more saturated than Borderlands 2, it leaves the whole planet with no uniqueness or threat added to it whatsoever. It genuinely just feels like a boring sand map with a nostalgia factor carrying the little enjoyment I get from it. However, the planet does stay true to its roots with the enemies, as obviously most creatures return. We have Skags back, we have Rax back, we have Psychos back, fuck, we even have Bonehead and Vermi back. But in the name of the Father and of the Son, for our beloved Scythids, who yet again have not made a comeback, unfortunately. And Guardians too. I always wondered why they never showed up on Borderlands 2 or 3's Pandora, because I really loved how in Borderlands 1 you just find them raving in a cave protecting alien treasure. It just added that extra mystique to Pandora we never really saw again. The only other time we saw something like it again was where Borderlands 3 gave us one of the most peculiar mysteries of all time with the Ascension Bluff door, which obviously ended up being Hemovorus the Invincible years down the line. But do you remember the buttons in Conrad's hold and how we initially thought this was a way to unlock the door? Man, I remember bringing one of my friends with, well, let's just say he might have been a little bit autistic here, and oh my god. So yeah, if I were to rank these planets individually, I'd give Borderlands 3's Pandora a 5 out of 10. It feels like a shadow of its former self, but hey, it does bring the big suck to the table, which is something you can't complain about. And there's the butt plug too, can't forget about that one. Honestly, I think the PAX East 2019's crowd reaction to the planet showcases how I feel about it. I honestly just wish it fucking rained sometimes, man. Like, imagine this place with rain. So aesthetic. Hey, I don't know, man, argue with the wall, but there's a reason why every GTA 5 graphics mod drenches Los Santos like it's set in the Philippines. The whole planet is very cool and a complete switch up to Pandora. It's a whole 180, like, when I played Borderlands 1 for the first time, I would have never expected to see a futuristic neon city setting with actual local businesses thriving and especially police cars. You can jump on the spinny thing, the siren, and it does a cool thing. The introduction of this planet was simply perfect to me. I love how the dropship drops you off in a cave, far away from the city environment, letting you take everything in as civilization grows deeper the further you walk. And actually, fun fact, Borderlands 3's story was originally going to start on Promethea. Yeah, no Pandora. There were also a bunch of handsome Jack statues placed around the map during the time he was still meant to come back as a villain in the game's original storyline. You can see these for yourselves within the Director's Cut DLC. But what I think I love the most about the planet is that despite the weak writing, the whole concept of a manufacturer war is really interesting to me. It really shows the contrast of wealth and technological advancements compared to Pandora, as you really couldn't imagine a war on this scale between two huge corporations on that wasteland. Even seeing new enemy vehicles and aircrafts was a huge whoa, because the most we got on Pandora were bandit technicals and buzzards. And not to mention, before I got cut from the game, we would have had access to a drivable tank. And let's not forget, the residents of Pandora probably couldn't even begin to imagine Borderlands 3's version of the Atlas manufacturer. These guns spawn at level 13, which is around the time you'd reach Promethea in the story, and like said, technological advancement here is shown throughout not only the weapon design, but also the auto-aim gimmick they have going on. And stuff like this for me is why I think placing Promethea as the second planet in the story was just an amazing play. It just helped you realize how much more the whole universe has to offer if the first two planets already differentiate this much. And so, for all the reasons mentioned above, I give Promethea a strong 9 out of 10. There's a few tidbits that annoy me here and there about the planet, such as the writing in certain areas, and mainly the fact that our characters just act like this is a normal environment to them when they land. I wish they took in the scenery a bit more.
Worst thing that ever happened to me. Let's do it again!
Yeah, you're not a fucking cow. What am I doing? Katagawa should have been the main villain of Borderlands 3, and I'm dying on that hill. Venus! If you click on any Borderlands YouTube video, high chance the content creator will be using this planet for background commentary, and hard to say I blame them. It's the perfect map with the perfect structure to just showcase your build and wipe out everything in your way. The planet looks absolutely beautiful, and they absolutely nailed the Monk Civilization aesthetic. We even got beloved, fan favorite, the amazing Captain Tron on this planet. As opposed to the not fan favorite, not amazing Ava on this planet. Yay. But it was really good, and I think this is the perfect showcase of how much Gearbox hates their community, because this planet never got a second location, despite us begging for it at the time. It's genuinely so annoying how, oh, every planet in the game gets a new location in the Director's Cut DLC. Yippee! But no! Not a Venus. No. And when they literally did give us a new location with a Villa Ultraviolet map which resembled the scenery of a Venus perfectly, they classified it as a different planet. Joey's planet. Really fucking creative there, guys. Nice one. I get the joke is, haha, he's rich, but to have his own planet? You have Marcus. He doesn't give out any fucking refunds. I bet he's straight balling. You tell me he's got his own planet too? It just goes to show that Gearbox hates us, man. And not to mention, just like Venus, this is also one of the best structured maps to just run through for mobbing in the entire game. Personally, I think we should all just retcon the idea of Joey's planet and merge it into Venus. Good? Good. Venus from me gets a score of 7 out of 10. The only actual negatives from me is that there's just not enough of it. And it introduces Ava.
I'm gonna be a siren!
You need a brain!
Eden 6. Man, people don't even want to play Eden 6. Do people want to talk about Eden 6? To give the planet some credit, we did get Wainwright and Balex, which are beloved fan favorites. Personally, I didn't like Clay, but if you have a kink for the word rogue site, I understand the appeal. Why the fuck is bro selling lube?
The rogue site.
It's just a damn shame that I'll never willingly return to it, because the filter that just so happens to look like your grandfather's piss is not too visually appealing. But besides that, this whole planet is a boring, dull, extremely slow-paced slog where the writers of the game completely failed to recognize Aurelia's character development throughout the pre-sequel and made her a generic bare-bones villain.
Hang on! I feel incredibly happy all of a sudden. Alistair must be in pain.
I'll meet you in Concordia. Need to have a talk with this guy.
Implied violence. Now, my dear, you are speaking my language.
I am Sir Hammerlock, a zoologist on Pandora. There are some fascinating creatures on the moon, but one in particular strikes my fancy. Since I'm not much for interplanetary travel, could you acquire a couple of specimens and mail them to me?
Sure, Hoss. No problem. This definitely ain't your sister pretending to be somebody else to avoid getting into another argument with you.
Despite making her look like a good guy in the trailers, I love misleading marketing. And not to mention, Eden 6 introduced these guys, and I think we all know how controversial they are. I don't know, overall I think I just expected more from a planet that's been as hyped up as it has been from all the way back in Tales from the Borderlands. Eden 6, you get a 3 out of 10 from me, my friend. Nothing about you is likable except the characters, and I guess I can give you bonus points for Gravelord too. Necrotefeo. It's a 9 out of 10 from me. I'm saying it right off the bat, as someone who loves Iridian lore and the concept of Guardians, and Iridian Homeworld was it for me. It was so fascinating, and the grey atmosphere was a perfect pick for this location. I also love how the planet doesn't only feature Guardians, but contains lots of never before seen wildlife. It's a good way of keeping the vibe mysterious and switching up combat, whilst at the same time keeping it sensical. We also got the last mission of the Ava murder mystery questline on this planet, and it was really cool. The whole water gimmick, what did I say about was really unique and a first for the franchise, and the lore with the Seer and the flat out confirmation Lilith was alive was really entertaining.
The key? You mean when Lilith firehawked Elpis?
The actions of your leader did not merely bend the course, she shattered it.
All of our work is for naught.
But what I do really dislike stopping this planet from becoming a 10 out of 10 in my books is the very silly decision of making the first ever Vault Hunter, which by the way, it could have been an amazing concept to find a badass first ever Vault Hunter on this planet, right? But it was so silly to make the first ever Vault Hunter's whole personality be, guys, I'm small. And unlike anyone who wrote my character, have sex. So much potential wasted. And you already know Gearbox thought they absolutely cooked with this. The guy who came up with the idea probably got a raise and a promotion and everything. And also, the fact we never got to fight the dead vault monster next to the vault, I get it for story reasons, but man, he looks so cool! And how could we possibly forget about the cube in the middle of Desolation's Edge? If you figured this little mystery out by yourself at launch, it was so satisfying and rewarding to have legendaries fly down onto you from the sky, and I'm glad this is something that exists on this exact planet. But yeah, with Necrotafeo out of the way, that marks all of the base game planets as covered. Meaning it's time to move on to DLC, and considering neither of the Handsome Jackpot nor Krieg's mind are actual planets, we're gonna leave them out of the conversation. I love the logic behind the Krieg DLC, by the way. We just fly and use the dropship into Krieg's mind. Yeah, we're real fucking creative there, guys. Silorgos. It's so close to a perfect 10. Not only was this the first snowy environment in the game, which just looked absolutely beautiful on the new engine, hitting nostalgia bones heavy for the old Borderlands 1 and 2 maps, but the Lovecraft theme of this DLC was the cherry on top for this environment. They picked the absolute perfect tone, they couldn't have done any better, and I love it. And yeah, whilst it was slightly disappointing to some that we never actually got to fight the dead Vault Beast originally imprisoned on the planet by Iridian's Giffian, even though it seemed like it was teased a bunch throughout the DLC story. Looking back on it, I'm glad. Having the corpse of this giant dead vault monster overarching certain areas of a planet as you progress through it was really immersive and unique to me. Made up for no boss fight, though reviving him for a raid boss fight would have been awesome. Eleanor's Heart, whilst not a good execution of a final boss, was a great concept that ended the storyline of a Lovecraft themed DLC really nicely. But how can you even go and talk about this planet without mentioning that absolutely every NPC born on Silorgos is unique due to being cursed by Giffian, with personality traits vastly varying from person to person. I genuinely think the side quest chain with Burton Briggs is the best attempt at a deep and dark Borderlands storyline since the first game, with Burton slowly restoring his memory and remembering the events leading up to his daughter's death. Gage came back too in an unexpected yet very welcome role, and the presence of Mancubus and the story surrounding the lodge are so interesting, and I really hope this isn't the last we see of the man.
Welcome to the lodge.
And finally, moving on to Gehenna. There honestly isn't much to say about this planet that hasn't been said for Pandora, because they're almost identical to each other. Like, as much as I enjoy Bounty of Blood, and as much as I agree with a majority that it has a very solid, strong story, the planet felt very unoriginal to me. I get it was inspired by Western settings, but the execution made it look like a less saturated Pandora. Like, I still remember one of the original complaints of this DLC when the trailer came out was, and this might sound familiar, oh, it's too brown. Which, like I said before, isn't necessarily a bad thing given the context, but the context here is when a planet lacks saturation in an already extremely saturated game, it feels out of place. And not to mention, when you actually end up performing a little editing magic yourself, as Marcus would say,
and welcome to Pandora!
That said, I did enjoy the little uniqueness it did bring to the table with environmental interaction like bounce pad teleporters and core exploders. But all that doesn't nearly justify the reasons for a new planet, and for that reason, I can't give Gehenna a score higher than a 4 out of 10. I really feel like Bounty of Blood could have just been set on Pandora, and that would help its diversity problems so much. Just think about it, right? Like, I complain about Pandora being a shell of its former self and being a boring sand planet. If you add things like core exploders, teleporters, and bounce pads, yes, it's still 2 steps back, but it does something right that gives it a step forward. But alas, with my takes out of the way, it's time to give you a full version of the intro by letting other creators passionate about the Borderlands franchise tell you a little bit about their favourite planets.
My favorite map in the entire history of Borderlands across all the games is Villa Ultraviolet or Villa Ultraviolet. I don't pinkies out, all right? The very first moment that you come up this little pathway at the beginning and you see just the beautiful sunset and like that 1980s like vibe that you get there. Of course, I'm old, I'm from the 80s. And there's something just beautiful about the map just from the get-go. Then you slide down a hill to get into the map. You have to enter a code to get through the gate, and then the music kicks in and you're like, oh shit, this is a vibe. There's something about this map. There's something about the whole vibe of Villa Ultraviolet that just does it for me on a whole nother level that no other map in the entire history of Borderlands can do.
Promethea is my favorite planet in the Borderlands series for several reasons. One of those reasons is that it gives off cyberpunk vibes, and that stems from the huge skyscrapers and the colorful lighting that you can see throughout the entire planet. To me, this planet makes you feel really immersed in the game, compared to the other planets that we have. Not to mention, one of the coolest manufacturers resides there, Atlas. And let's be honest, they have the coolest military company in the whole Borderlands franchise, that being the Crimson Lance. And finally, Promethea gave us some of the coolest locations to explore in Borderlands 3, with Electra City, Atlas HQ, and so much more.
Ah yes, Pandora. The planet of unformidable weather, the planet of abandonment, the planet of death, and of course, the planet of Face McShooty himself. There's many a reason to stay as far away as possible from Pandora, but for some reason I remain astounded by its presence. I love Pandora and its relinquishing intrigue on me. Its dynamic environments, changing from flash freezes of a drastic scale to droughts so large entire continents dry up. Its population, ranging from dull working miners long abandoned to leftovers of experiments forgotten by Hyperion. Its aggressive fauna and flora, making Australia look like a little icky wicky baby nursery in comparison. But it's not perfect, and especially not in the latest visions the creators have had for it, in my opinion anyway. In Borderlands 3, I feel like Pandora lost its rustic, drab and abandoned feel like it had in the first game, and could argue even the second game. I don't know how to put it properly, but you truly felt alone in the first game. The huge scale environments with nothing for miles, and the sad, somber and almost chill music gave me a feeling of civilization and a planet long past its peak. And I would love to see that type of vibe back.
Yep, that's my good deed done for today. I love helping out smaller creators. Like and subscribe if you think that was a humble act on my end. And of course, let me know what you overall think of the planet system. One thing's for certain, whilst not perfect and with faults, Gearbox definitely created a beautiful world where the possibilities are nothing but endless.